carrying forth. Let us go forward in this. So it is bad news to think that a bank's bottom line is to make money. Any service should not be provided, I contend, that has a bottom line of making money without some alternative motive for the benefit of the commons, for the common people, or sentient beings. A doctor shouldn't have money making as her or his bottom line. The thought process by such a doctor being something along the lines of, the patient can live or die so long as I am making money from them, ha 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 ha. I doubt you'd want to go see such a doctor. It is pretty much outrightly the case that a bank's existence is to fulfill their bottom line, which is making money. This is indeed a morally dangerous stance for any institution to be taking, especially an institution that has already a great deal of centralized power. The FDIC is being used as a way to bail out the most influential of the world's banks. Take note of this fact, as it is important to understanding the greater global trends. Why aren't the ma and pops banks getting bailed out? Go back to step 3 of the above process. This step makes explicit that it is those larger banks that are used as a vehicle to move the process forward. These banks are allowed to fail because if they do, the financial gurus tell us that the sky will fall. And it is, in a sense, true, it will, but this is pre-designed into the system, or aptly, perhaps more, the scheme. It is, in other words, a political scheme which is safeguarded by this morally corrupt banking system. Quote, the people who create the problems within the system seldom suffer the consequences of their actions. So elaborating a little on this first step, the money created out of nothing is a very real tax that's felt by the general public. It occurs through a process of devaluing the dollar and vertically integrating the assets to and for the banking cartel, the group of bankers that have created and maintained the kinds of rules stated above. So, serving their bottom line of creating more money for themselves in a way that goes off mostly unseen to the public. Quote, depositors continue to live in a dream world of false security as of 2010, which may well soon change, and banks can operate recklessly and fraudulently with the knowledge that their political partners in government will come to their rescue when they get into trouble, end quote. Which we did see, right, in the bank bailout in 2008, and such scams, and it too was part of the above whole schema being applied to the first world economies now, presently. To succeed on the new global takedown of the economy, they must succeed in presenting to the public an image of heroic effort to protect us. The same thing happened with the Continental bailout in the early 80s, where the point was made loud and clear that to not bail out the bank would cause certain catastrophic consequences for everyone's pocketbook. There is an initial truth to this, but when this truth is looked at through that 7-step process, to bail out, it is framed at that point when a giant banking Ponzi scheme is to really make money for these bankers, or power, power probably more than the money, because the money is just a consequence of, the power is a consequence of, centralizing the money. The Fed had to be able to create whatever amount of money was needed during a bailout for the banking cartel. This was necessary or the whole scam wouldn't work, or according to the Fed chairman Paul Volcker, the operation, or the bailout, is the most basic function of the Federal Reserve. It was why it was founded, end quote. This message is telling us that the world's biggest banks are going to be supplied with liquidity when in troubled times they will be bailed out. Well, the smaller banks are allowed to go under. As Sparky has, I think that's how it's pronounced, has said, quote, small banks pay proportionally far more for their insurance and have far less chance of a continental-style bank bailout, end quote. A big minus for the little guys, as is a common theme within this world presently. So getting back to the Mandrake mechanism, which is step 1, or the creation of money out of nothing. The ancient alchemists sought, quote, in vain to convert lead into gold. Modern alchemists have succeeded in their quest. The lead bullets of war have yielded an endless source of gold for these magicians who control the mandrake, or money out of nothing mechanism. So, quote, fractional money is paper money which is backed by precious metals up to only a portion of the face amount. It is a hybrid, being part receipt money and part fiat money. Generally, the public is unaware of the fact and believes that fractional money can be redeemed in full at any time. When the truth is discovered, as periodically happens, there are runs on the bank, and only the first few depositors in line can be paid. Since fractional money earns just as much interest for the bankers as does gold or silver, the temptation is great for them to create as much as possible. As this happens, smaller and smaller, until eventually it reduces to zero. Therefore, fractional money will always degenerate into fiat money. It is but fiat money in transition, end quote. Lenin, of the early communist Russia, probably believed that debauching the currency of a country or the world would be the best way to destroy the capitalist system. There are many indicators, as noted previously, that we are in the midst of such a debauching. Whatever you think of communism. I'm not necessarily against certain principles of it, but how it's been run, not so great. So Lenin is said to have been declared that the best way to destroy the capitalist system was to debauch the currency. By continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of wealth of their citizens. By this method, they not only confiscate arbitrarily, and while the process impoverishes many, it actually enriches some. As the inflation proceeds and the real value of the currency fluctuates widely from month to month, all permanent relations between debtors and creditors, which form the ultimate foundation of capitalism, become so utterly disorderly as to be almost meaningless, and the process of wealth getting degenerates into gamble and a lottery. End quote. Lenin was right. There is no subtler nor surer means of overturning the existence of banking of society than to debauch the currency. Quote, the process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction and does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose. End quote. Here's another quote from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Modern monetary systems have fiat-based, literally money by decree, with depository institutions acting as fiduciaries, creating obligations against themselves, with fiat-based acting in part as reserves. The decree appears on the currency notes. So it says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. While no individual could refuse to accept such money for debt repayment, exchange contracts could easily be composed to thwart its use in everyday commerce. However, forceful explanation as to why money is accepted is that the federal government requires it as payment for tax liabilities. Anticipation of the need to clear the debt creates a demand for the pure fiat dollar. End quote. In 1941, after the Fed put $2 billion in money to purchase government bonds in 1933, Eccles and Patman had an exchange in front of the House Committee for Banking and Currency. They said, Eccles, we created it, Patman. Out of what, Eccles? Out of the right to issue credit money, Patman. And there's nothing behind it, is there? Except our government's credit? Eccles, that is what our money system is. If there were no debts in our money system, there wouldn't be any money there. Yes, I'll stop at that. That was another